Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. I am very excited today to be finally filming a spoiler-free review of Hidden Bodies by KEPNES. But I will say up front, just because you guys know the biggest thing for me in reviews is honesty, I was sent this book by the publishing company, which I am so grateful for because this does come out, I think, February 23rd. But again, that doesn't affect my review in any way, shape, or form. I think you guys who have watched my videos for years know that by now. So I will go ahead and get into my review. And again, this will be 100% spoiler-free regarding Hidden Bodies. However, if you have not read the first book in the series, I think just because of the basic nature of the plot of Hidden Bodies, it's gonna inevitably sort of give away something that happens in You. I'm not gonna be stating anything that happens in it, so you technically could watch this video, but I would probably recommend reading the first one before watching this. So when Hidden Bodies takes off, Jo has a new love interest named Amy Adam. They both work at the bookshop together very happily. She is the polar opposite of Beck in that she's completely off the grid and off social media. As things are going just incredibly well between both of them, she disappears. I will not say why, but this leads him to have to attempt to track her down in LA, which is one of the things I was looking most forward to in this book, just because I could not picture Jo's personality doing well in LA, which I'll get to. So that's all I'm gonna say in terms of the plot of this book. So I'm gonna go ahead and get into the good and the bad. You guys know it wouldn't be a real Chapter Stacks review if I didn't get into both sides of what I liked and what I didn't like. I think I might start off with what I didn't like first so we can end on a positive note. So my biggest issue with this book was probably Jo's love interest, and this plot line in terms of this love interest and her family takes up probably the majority of the book, and I have to admit I just didn't find the love interest very interesting. And I always wish I could know from the author if we're supposed to enjoy his love interests or not, because I think the point of You, the first book, Beck was a fairly irritating character. She never did. You find yourself rooting for Jo and being so confused. However, with Hidden Bodies, I think we're actually supposed to like his love interest, and I just flat out didn't find her very interesting. But then it makes me think, am I being Jo, for example, when he would watch Beck in the first book and be saying, oh, she doesn't belong with that guy I'm watching her with? Am I just doing that, watching Jo with this love interest and saying, oh, he really doesn't belong with her, he shouldn't like her? Then I find myself questioning myself and saying, am I just being a little too like Jo? And that is a positive about the series. It does make you get in your own head and think about those kinds of things. So my other con, and I really just had two main ones, the first one being I just wasn't interested in the love interest or her family. The second one being, in my opinion, it was just too much change and not in the right way. If all of a sudden it felt as if in Hidden Bodies, Jo just becomes incredibly charismatic, loves being around people. All of a sudden he's also this sex magnet and girls are falling all over themselves to be with him. And it just felt a little bit jarring and out of place, and maybe that was just something I missed in the first book, that he was that way, but it did just feel a bit too full on, as my English friends would say. However, his voice is still the same. He's still incredibly witty and sarcastic, so although his voice didn't necessarily change, a lot of his actions just did. And part of me thinks I shouldn't be saying this is a con because maybe that's just him progressing as a character, but for me it just felt like a lot of change really fast, and I felt as if I had to suspend my belief a lot of time, and some things were just too coincidental, particularly concerning his love interest's reactions to some of the things he does. Even though there are always explanations, sometimes it just didn't feel realistic enough for me. Okay, so those were the two things that I wasn't the biggest fan of in the book, but I did overall really enjoy it, so now I'll go ahead and get into the good. So like I said, if you are an obsessive Jo fan, I have to admit I never understand when people really fangirl or ship things or do all of that, but Jo is one of those few people in book series where I am a little obsessive about, I'll admit. And it's still the exact same voice. He's still incredibly sarcastic. The book is much more lighthearted than I think the first, which I think is fine for a sequel. You don't want to be seeing the exact same thing. And seeing Jo interact with the different kinds of people that he meets in LA, if you can imagine, even back in the first book when he was in New York City, he would mock hipsters and mock kill shakes. So imagine him in LA. So the commentary is just hilarious. It's a lot of pop culture references. For example, if you enjoy that aspect of Gilmore Girls, I could see people in that same vein really liking this book. And as I said, the book is very different from the first. And although I wasn't the biggest fan of how Jo's character changed in Hidden Bodies, as I said, I was happy that it wasn't the exact same format as You. I was a little nervous when I heard about the basic plot of Hidden Bodies, I thought, oh my god, is it just gonna be the same sort of thing as you see in You, but just with a different female? And it's not, it's very different. So there is progression going on in these books, and I do think a sequel, and after this I'm sure there's going to be another one, so I'm hoping this will be a trilogy, as I'll get to, but I do think a sequel was warranted. And although, as I said, I had a couple of issues with the plot, the writing style overall is still incredibly strong. I'm just a huge fan of Caroline Kepnes's writing. It's right up there, probably with Gillian Flynn for me, if I'm being honest, and you guys know how much I love Gillian Flynn. So when I'm looking at both of these two books, because I know what a lot of people kept asking me is, does it live up to You? How does it feel in comparison? You did feel incredibly unique. It had this incredibly shocking ending, whereas Hidden Bodies, I think, is its much more lighthearted companion, which I don't think is necessarily a con. Again, if it had the exact same tone and sort of plot line as the first, I would have been upset and very bored. So yeah, I had a couple of plot issues with this, but the main reason I enjoy this series is because I love Jo's narration and takes on the world and pop culture and people and his just overall perceptions of things. So I will say, if you enjoyed You, I highly recommend going ahead and checking out Hidden Bodies. Even though I did have a couple plot issues with it, it was a very strong sequel in my opinion. You guys know I'm always looking for a new psychological thriller, so if you've read this series, let me know what you thought about it, or if you have another psychological thriller you'd like to recommend, please let me know, and I'll see you guys soon.